What's up, Zox fam? We're back with some more Etheria Restart. Appreciate you guys for tuning in today. And of course, I'm sending you guys a ton of positive vibes. And if it is not so positive, I hope that your day gets much, much better. Something that I've really been wanting to talk about, which is the value of units. Are the R rarities just as valuable as the SR, or are the SRs just as valuable as the SSR, etc.? This is a really important component, especially for a lot of people that come into the game, especially being free to play. I'm just gonna say right off rip, and I'm gonna rip that band-aid off, you are not going to be able to build a ton of SSRs right away. The thing that makes up for this though is the fact that there are SRs and R rarity units in the game. The big question is, like I mentioned before, are these units comparable to the SSRs? In a lot of ways, I would even argue that a lot of the SRs are actually better than some of the SSRs. That of course is going to be subjective to investment. One of the first things that I was looking at as I've been, kind of just going through the game and testing, I'll start off with the lowest rarity. So one of my lowest rarity units I have built on my team, Ashu. This is again not even a unit that they give to you for free, comparatively to like the Kachi that you get for free, for example, which is all the way down here, who I don't have built. He's a R rarity. He is still very good. Of course, they give you Sybil as well as one of your first R rarity units. She's actually pretty solid for what she does. But I started looking at things like base speeds, kind of like starting to look at like the skill upgrading and stuff like that. When we're looking at, like, say for example, like the skill upgrading, it is going to be much cheaper. So if we go to prowess, if we go to prowess here and we go to one of the skills, it's going to be very cheap comparatively to raise the level of a skill on a R rarity versus like an SSR. For example, like if we look at node 1 here, that's 10 of the training materials that's going to be required for you to imprint this, right? And it just keeps going. It goes 20, then it goes to 30, and then it's 40 plus this training material, the micro lattice, which of course is pretty easy to obtain. It's actually a shop that you can just go and buy these from. Hopefully they end up adding a place in the game where these just drop, but nonetheless, you just kind of see like the cost there. Now versus if we go to like an SSR, for example, here it starts out at 30 for the respective attribute, and this is going to be the same across all attributes. It goes and jumps up to 60, so it doubles, right? So we're at 90, 120, and now also needing the perfect lattice, which is the SSR material, which again is going to be very, very scarce to obtain. This is going to be something you get from like first killer missions. I would say events are probably going to end up having these. These are like weekly rewards inside of shops. This isn't something that is just going to drop. You're gonna have to be very, very attentive on who you're giving these skill ups to, and if you're free to play, you're only going to be working on a very, very select couple. I'm not even gonna say few SSRs in the very beginning because this resource is so scarce. And then when you think about it, for each node that essentially needs to be powered up, you're going to need that resource for the respective node again, right? So it doesn't increase in quantity, like it's always a 1-to-1 for every time that you use one, but it is going to be like, for example, this one skill, I need a total of 4 of those to fully max out this skill. You have to kind of think of that per skill, right? So for this one, I also need 4. Right? So this is something that you're just gonna have to kind of think about. For the SRs, I will say that out of all the resources that have been given in abundance, is definitely the SR skillet material. And the thing is that, like, for example, I have 4 now, but I've used it across a few different SRs that I've been building up. And I would even say that SRs are going to be the solid choice or way to go for just kind of fleshing out and creating that diversity on your account. I think that they're going to be probably the most efficient just in terms of what we have accessible, in just terms of like what kits are accessible from the SRs, because the R rarity isn't like a vast roster, so you're not going to have a ton of choices necessarily. There are some really great ones there, and I have future videos talking about that, but you're going to be diversifying your account and giving yourself options. This is going to be important for the PvE progression in the game, and as well as the PvP progression. Of course, I think the biggest push and one of the like most major concerns with the game is that it's supposed to be a PvP based game. My current team is actually consisting of 1 SSR, 2 SRs, and 1 R rarity unit. Are they able to hold weight within the game? The reason why they are is because of the fact of base stat scaling. Now, typically in a lot of games, you'll have it to where certain units aren't going to be given certain value because of their rarity. So their base stats for speed might be very low. It ultimately makes it to where they aren't able to keep up with meta because they just don't have the base stat scaling. Like speed typically isn't something that is able to be fluctuated too much. And ultimately, when you start getting to in-game in-game builds, it usually is one of those things where you have to look at the base speed in conjunction to the added speed that you give the character. For example, if we take a look here and we look at like one of my speed rotators, Close, for example, she's at a 218 speed, and respectively so, that's very, very high. That's just her base. That's not including when you add to it, etc. Now, one of the units I'm also using, like I mentioned, Ashu, is at a 110. So for him to be an R rarity, that's still pretty high. Granted, is this going to be something that like you're talking about is going to be the super in-game meta? Maybe not. But is this going to be something that suffices to get you through and up and climbing the ladder? Absolutely. Again, 110 is faster than most characters. My Obel is at 112, for example. He's an SR. So granted, you have units like Tiamat at 107, Messiah at 108, 112 for the Sania. So it's very, very minute speed. And honestly, depending on the rolls or RNG of your gear, that could definitely be something that, you know, you can still have this unit outspeed a higher rarity unit just because you have a more tuned build. So that is something to, you know, kind of consider. Again, this is going to be according to like starting the game out. Everybody is going to be essentially pushing for trying to get the highest stats that they possibly can, and no one's going to have stats that are perfect. I would say, give or take, until we've been probably in the game for about anywhere from 4 to 6 months, it's really going to be hard to say if a character is completely X'd out, completely of meta when it comes down to things like the base speed or the ability to, you know, essentially have them be relevant because they're able to do things. The other thing that I think is also really important too is the value of skills. Are the skills actually good on these units? And I gotta say, yeah, I've been using this character, for example, for quite a bit. And the crazy thing is he's an AoE silencer. Silence is really potent, obviously, in a lot of games, but it's extremely powerful in this game because that means you're forcing the S1 from every single character that this procs on. And then he has the ability to proc a AoE DOT, right? So really, really strong. A couple of other characters as well from the R rarity that also are giving some pretty unique things. They have the ability like an AoE attack break here. And then you have like the self-sustain kind of passive damage boost, so reducing damage taken by 20% each time he takes damage. I mean, he gains 1 stack of Wrath Quake, which is kind of insane, right? And that stacks up to 10 times. That's 100%. So these, I would even say in PvE, when you're facing against them, are hard to kill. So even just like those interesting tank comps that are probably going to appear, they're going to probably have dudes like this just randomly on them. And that's kind of the cool things that they've kind of have opened up for the game. Again, I think it is also safe to say that the SRs are giving that value even at a slightly higher peak. They are going to be very relevant. Like again, like a 118 speed RC77, that's really fast. When we're looking at like some of our SSRs, we got the 118 close, right? So the SRs are going to be very close in value, and honestly, they're going to be right up there with a lot of the SSRs. I mean, even some of the Rs are going to be trending right there, right? Like they're like pretty close. And I would even say like right now in PvP, and the crazy thing is that my platinum team is basically autoing people, right? Like it's literally consisting of 2 SRs and 1 R and then a SSR, and that's mainly, I guess, my attack team. My defense has 2 SSRs, but yeah, we're just basically climbing this as we go. The cool thing is if you win your defenses, then you accumulate points, so you can go up tiers without even actually doing anything if you have a really good defense, right? So I've been testing these things out. There is still a lot more to test out within the game. I definitely will say that I think that they you know, have done a pretty solid job as far as making sure the units overall are pretty usable. There's a lot of tinkering and balancing, and I would definitely say some buffing they're gonna have to probably do to a lot of characters. Like Shada is like one of them. Like she just kind of underperforms, it seems like. Maybe it could just be she's more of an in-game build, so we'll have to get to that point and maybe build her for that. But overall, it's really, really good. I will say that I feel like the meta is pretty balanced. There's a lot of different variances. There's a lot of counters to the counters, right? So I know a lot of people are hyping up a unit named Lilith, for example, who is extremely good, by the way, right? She is actually very, very good. Lilith is one of the freebie units that you have as a potential option in the game. But what's actually crazy about Lilith is that she doesn't even have the highest base speed, you know, for her to be rotating. So I've been able to figure out a way to shut down Lilith's completely, and which is one of the cool things. As good as this unit is, she has counters, right? And the thing is that, again, the unit I counter her with isn't even an SSR or an SR. It's an R rarity. When you're talking about like diversity and the ability to be able to mix and match your compositions, that does exist and is a part of the game. And that's something that I think is actually like quite exciting, is that they actually have those layers there. What I'm hoping that they do is that they continue to add, yes, add your SSR if you like, but add an R R rarity into the gacha pool, add a SR into the gacha pool that's able to give value, and of course is really nice for investment. If you're having your events, you can do an event where you give a valuable SR or R rarity unit. Again, I'm not sleeping on the unit just because of the rarity. They just need to have a good kit, right? And of course, the good thing with that is that the lower the rarity, the easier it is to build them up. And that's going to be something I think that would be really nice for the early game progression. Some of the feedback, I already have like a document that the developers are already taking a look at. Some of the feedback that I've given already has, a lot of correlation to, the beginner progress and progression, just to make things a lot easier for you guys. I will say, like, the game definitely has some tinkering and some work to do in that regard, just to line you up so that you're going after and getting things that's going to set you up for success in the game. So again, I will say though, overall, from what I've seen and from what I've been able to test with CBT3, there are some pretty balanced things. And I want this to be coming from a perspective right now, okay? I'm gonna show you my arena rank, because I know some people are gonna be like, what do you know? Right now, I am rank 53, and that's with very minimal climbing. Like, I literally have been like mainly winning purely off of my defense. Even when you look at a lot of the comps, right? In the top, I would say 50, right? We could just say top 50 people. There's no one using the team comp style music. Like, literally no one, okay? And that's just because I'm trying out different things. I've swapped my team comp probably 3 or 4 times already since I've been able to develop more stuff, and I'm just testing out different things. What's working on my defense, what's not, what works on offense, what's not. I'm going through the ringer of, tiering units now. So I will have some tier lists, and they're gonna be very, very descriptive tier lists as far as content-oriented tier lists, because there's units within the game that will perform really well in one area and maybe not in another, but overall they still might be a double S or a triple S unit, right? I think it's also safe to say too that some units that might be triple S in one area might not be in a completely different. So tier lists where they're just giving you the straight raw, oh, this unit's triple S, isn't necessarily true. There's a couple of units that do fall into that category, but that is not the case for a lot of units, okay? So that's gonna be basically that with this one, guys. Let me know what you guys think. What are your hopes, hopefully, as far as like expectations as well with the game, as far as metas, what are you looking for? Are there certain types of strats or synergies that you're extremely excited to try out? Let me know in the comment section down below. But that's gonna be that with this one, guys. Everyone, stay blessed, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.